Okay, so this part of the tutorial is going to be showing you how to build the texture in Photoshop and then map it in Blender. Hopefully you have basically this object. I've got two different things here. We've got um, the base that's you did some loop cuts on, and we should have um, maybe 5 subdivisions here and 2 on the side. This is just for demonstration purposes. The roof is a separate object, so really 2 objects here. And in the end, I'm going to show you how to texture them. So we're going to first start by getting our textures, and I do that from cgtextures.com, and basically downloaded 4 textures. This one is named Small Brick New 0080, and it's a seamless texture. This one's Buildings 18th Century 002. This one's Concrete Plates 0116. This is Roof Tiles Slate 0080. If you've watched the other video, it's the same textures, but you can go on Google, get any textures you want. For things that are tiling, we want seamless textures. So in the end, we take these into Photoshop, and you're going to see I'm basically going to create a new file and bring these all into it. So let's first go File, New, and create a 2048 by 2048 file. And let's go grab the brick first. So we're going to go Select All, Edit Copy, then come back to our new file and do Edit Paste. Now it's bigger than I want. Hit Control minus to kind of zoom out a little bit. And we're going to go Edit, Transform, Scale. And we're going to change this up top here to 50% for the height and width. Save that. I got to put it down here in the bottom corner. We're going to duplicate this layer, so double click on there, right click on layer 1, click duplicate, and then drag it, and it should lock in. If not, make sure that you've got snapping on, so go to view and make sure that snap is on. Now I'm going to hit control, we're going to merge this, and I think it's Control E, yeah, it's to merge there. And then I'm going to duplicate it again. And I've got CS2 here, and it does something buggy where it keeps disappearing on you. Control E. Let's duplicate it again. Alright, so you can basically see I've done my own tiling, but have a bunch of brick, and you're going to see one side I'm going to leave as plain brick, and I'm going to bring a ruler or a guideline in here for the middle. And then now let's do the roof part to this. So let's minimize that. Let's see, open our roof tile slate, select all, edit copy, paste that in as well here. We're going to scale that down, same thing, 50%. Do the same process here where we duplicate the layer. Control E to merge it down, duplicate it again. Control E, duplicate it again. Okay. So now really we could do the roof, we could do the brick, we'd be fine, but we still have more that I want in here. So actually we're going to Control E down the brick. The roof, in the end, probably does not need to be this big. I really almost want it like 1/3 of the way. So we can kind of do something like that. But let's Control E, the roof, and let's scale it down a little more and do Edit, Transform, Scale. And let's reduce this, by 30% or so. Let's do 70. Actually, let's just transform it in the Y dimension. Scale. Let's just change it in the height 70%. And then drag that up. Okay. And then in this intervening space, we'll put this concrete plate. So Open up your concrete texture, do the same thing. And you'll see we can come back and edit this later if we don't like the resolution on certain things. Some things might be too big, and we don't really need them to take up so much of that texture space. And we'll come back and shrink things down if need be. But let's do same thing here. Let's scale this down. See what happens if we just do 30% here. Same thing, just duplicate these layers. Control plus to zoom in. Sometimes the snapping's a little off. Don't know why. At least it looks like it's a pixel off there. Control E, merge it down, duplicate again. Now you can see I'm using this just sort of layer select tool here. That's that arrow to just grab it and drag it. Control E, duplicate it again. Should be the last time. Alright. So now we've kind of got the basics down. Now we just need to add some windows to this. Now you can hope, some of you might be able to find exactly what you want and don't have to do as much fiddling as I'm doing here. But in the end, you can also sort of just individually pull windows from different things. You could also, instead of what I'm doing with the brick here and making it by hand, you could just take one of these larger sections if it's exactly what you want. I couldn't find exactly what I wanted, so I'm just showing you how to build it by hand. But you could take a larger section and get some of this neat sort of pillaring and whatnot, and that might even be a better effect. I just wasn't patient enough to look around. So I'm going to just take a couple windows. You may not want a window like this that's got something real obvious on it, that if you're duplicating the windows, they look similar. So let's take one of these here. So same thing, just outline the window, edit copy, come back here, edit paste, and then just kind of bring this window around. Now, if you remember the object, it had 3 windows vertically, so I'm going to try to do the same thing here. Now you can come back to this selection tool here, that's top left, and you can just drag this around. Don't have to retrace it, that way all the windows will be exactly the same size. Edit copy, edit paste. Now that you can do Control C, Control V for that as well, but so I'm kind of eyeballing this. What I should have done here is come back to the layer for that first window and drag out a guideline. So come up to the horizontal ruler and drag that down. If you don't have that showing, do View Rulers or Control R, and then you can drag down guidelines there. What that allows me to do is now put this other window right on the same line. And we want to do let's just do a couple across here. I don't know if I want to do 2 or 3 across, but we can bring it into Blender and then adjust as we go. Edit copy, Control V. And now I'm not going to be real picky here because we're just trying to do a quick tutorial and it can get painfully long if you watch me kind of mess around here. So Control E, bring them all down to the same layer, duplicate that again, and then drag that down. Then Control plus can zoom you in here, so if you want to kind of get a little more, or get in a little closer to see exactly what you're doing to make sure you're symmetrical. And then let's just duplicate this layer one more time. Control minus. Alright, so I'm going to do a little bit of fiddling here. Alright, Good enough for now. So anyway, you can see now this is actually a completely seamless texture. It's going to tile nicely across the face. I can use this for the side of the building. There's also the way to do windows by hand as single planes, which I showed you in the other part of it. So you can do a mixture of this technique, but let's save this. So we're going to File, Save As, and I want to save it as the PSD first so that we can always come back and edit it. And let's call this just building part 2, since this is just the other way to do this. I'm going to save that. And then also save it as the PNG. So File, Save As, PNG. Alright. So now if we go into Blender, and we're going to bring that in. So hopefully you've watched the other tutorial. If not, just to show you here, we're going to bring in a second window, come up to this triangle in the top right corner and drag to the left. Now this is the duplicate 3D view. You want to change this to the UV image editor. So come down here to this radio button, UV image editor, and now you've got the UV image editor. If you want that to go away, you can click this triangle again and drag it over, and then if you let go, it will make it go away. Alright, so let's bring that in. Let's create a material. So we're going to go up to this world, or this little globe, which is the material tab, and we're going to create a new one. So we're going to click this plus to add a new material slot. Then we're going to click new, and then we're just going to call this building part 2 and hit enter. You can call it whatever you want. I usually match my layer name, so I'm going to call this building part 2 as well. My layer name for my object with the same as my material, which is the same as my texture, because I'm just doing single texture, single materials. Then you're going to click this checkerboard to the right of it. So now what you can see is this is basically that albedo channel for this material. So in the end, click this texture, new. We're going to open and go bring in that building part 2 PNG. So you can see that here. Now if you come to the UV image editor and go to the browse image to be linked button here and just pick that building part 2. So now you can see we brought in our Photoshop texture. It's not showing up yet on this building because we haven't assigned it to it. So the first thing we're going to do is select our object, and you're going to hit A to select the entire object, and then you can click this assign button here, and that's going to assign that texture here. That automatically happens because we only have one material. And then what you're going to do is we're going to unwrap this, and so you're going to hit U to unwrap, and then just click Smart UV Project, and then you're going to see here, and leave this as is 66 in the check boxes, and click OK, and it does it automatically for us. And pick that building part 2. And so in the end, it's automatically unwrapped here, and we should be seeing it here in the viewport. Let me delete. One thing here while you're here is on this UV, so go back to that checker, come down, and you see UV coordinates mapping. Change this to UV map. There's only one UV map here, so I don't know that that really matters. And then I'm also going to go and delete my lamp. So I'm going to pick that lamp layer, right click and choose delete. Just allows me to see my texture better. So you can see here that we're in texture viewport shading mode. You might want to save your project at this point. I've saved mine as this UV save, but you can see that it's not right, because if I select the object with A and tab to go into edit mode here, tab to go into edit mode, you can see how this has laid this 3D object out for us. So this portion, is drawing on the roof our windows. So let's come over here in the window on the right, and we're going to select all the points by hitting A. May have to hit it twice, and G to grab, and let's just move it out of the way. Okay. And let's work on the roof first. So I'm going to select all the top roof parts, and I'm going to hit the number 7. And now if you're not in ortho view, you're in perspective, hit 5 to cycle, and so it should say top ortho now. So 7 to get you at the top. And then I'm going to hit U and choose project from view. And that's going to symmetrically project a roof here. Now R, you're going to move your mouse to this right panel, hit R90. You're going to rotate it around, G to grab it, and now just move it over top of the roof texture. Now you can see we've tiled it, but things are not exactly right. So what I do now is I'm going to G to grab and move this out of the way. I want to make these two panels sit on top of each other because they're mirror images of each other basically. So let's grab this one first, and you can also select it. You can select it over here on the left, and then hit A, make sure the whole thing's selected, and then G and bring it down. And now before I scale it, because I kind of want to scale this whole thing as one unit, I'm gonna let's view everything over here. So see how I only see the one UV points. If you click this, keep UV and edit mode mesh selection and sync, you can see all the points here. But in the end, what I want to do is turn on my magnet and change this to vertex, snap UV element to vertex. And let's grab this other part of the roof, R180, and it flips it around, G to grab it, and now we're going to just overlay it over the other part of the roof. And we're going to do the same with these triangular portions on the end. R270, R90, G, overlap, B to box select, left click and drag, G, and drag this over here. So we're going to scale these all together. And I want this one to be on the, yeah, exactly on the bottom there. The one thing with this is here, let's turn off the snapping. So turn off the magnet. Let's G to grab this. What we got to do is scale this in the Y. So SY. And get those to match exactly on the other parts of the roof. So if that makes sense, you can see when you zoom in, see how these lines now touch. I'm going to scale again SY. See if it was like this, they're just not the same dimension in the Y. So the X is fine. We just had to scale it in the Y there. So let's now grab the entire roof, B to box select, left click and drag. Now we've got our entire roof selected, and we can do S to scale it. And basically you got to eyeball this. How many of these do I want? S to scale. Now I want it to be wider. You know, I don't like it. It's still a little squarish to me. So I'm going to do SX, and if we bring it in, now it's getting wider. So you can see that. I kind of like that. Now one thing you'll notice is it's not the same here. It's stretched a little more in the Y, so you could individually select these side ones and get a little nitpicky, and you can scale S, X, and then kind of decide how you want that to play out. The other thing you might notice here that I've got is I don't like how these fall out a little bit. I'm going to pick the whole roof. See at the bottom line, I want that to be more one full tile. So G to grab, and then just move it with your arrow keys to get more exact, and then hit enter. Now the one thing you'll notice now here, this does not take up that much room. So to be honest, we should really just kind of move this and make the most of our texture space. So in the end, if you wanted to add more things, pillars and other designs, we can now block this area off and add stuff in here for our texture that we can map other objects. So when this becomes a more detailed object, your roof is really only taking up, you know, maybe 15% of this map. One thing you can do is you can export your UV layout. So if you want, if your all your shapes are selected, you can do that with A. If they were all overlaying on this, I can show you this at the end too. But if we export our UV layout, and let's just save this as UV layout, and that's going to just save it as a PNG. You can go back into Adobe and you can open that, and you can see our UV layout. We can select this whole thing, and then you can paste it over top of this. Now let's see if I get rid of the snapping. Clear my guides. I don't know why it wants. You'll see when we get the whole object and it has more, it's not going to paste it to the center. It'll paste it where it's supposed to on the UV map. So let's finish unwrapping this. You can do each of these by hand. Let me just show you. Pick one square. You can click U and unwrap, and then you can scale this to fit over this here however you want. Now in the end, you're probably going to want it to tile correctly. And so what we probably should do is make sure, because now if I pick this next one, we do it the same. You'll see there could be some discrepancies, if it's not perfectly seamless. So you don't necessarily want it that way. You would maybe instead want to make sure oh, I took my snapping off. So I don't know if you remember when we constructed this, right to this line is actually our seamless repeating texture. And so in the end you could put like a mark that you knew was where that was. Just making a new layer here. And we can take this out at the end. And then save this as the PNG. And then when you come in Blender, there's one small buggy thing here where you have to go File, Open Recent. So I just saved it, and then go File, Open Recent, and open your file again, and then it will refresh. And so then you'll see there. So in the end, what you're wanting to do, now this is going to compress it. It's going to look a little funny, but I just want to show you how you can have the repeating texture. And basically, I'm going to scale this in the X. So you can get more of a seamless effect. Now you can also edge select here, so see I'm just going to grab the, and then GX, just grab the edge select and pull that in. Now obviously the scaling's not what you'd want here, but what I'm showing you is how you can maintain a seamless transition here. Let me pick this other one, and same thing is, let's go to magnet vertex and drag it over G to grab. It's going to want to line it up on the edge. Just grab the left edge, G, X. A to deselect, grab this edge, G, X. I got to get off that magnet, G, X. Lord. Deselect, grab this edge, G, X. Let's grab all the front and back faces here and make them all the same. So I'm going to select the front and back faces here. We're going to go U, unwrap, and you're going to see it's going to make a bunch of symmetrical faces. We want to use that magnet, and let's drag them all over top of each other. G, G. Let's just make them the same for now. G. So what's going to happen is we're going to scale all these as a unit, and then they will all sort of be symmetrical. B. I'm going to turn off the magnet now. G. And now we're going to scale it in the Y. G. So that was just SY, SY again. Now SX. And you can see I'm coming up to that to get to the tileable. And now you could see some of these windows are actually upside down. So this side is good. The windows here are upside down. So let's just select all the ones on this side, and you're going to hit R180. Okay. So the only reason I'm using this line here is what I'm going to show you is now if we, I mean I should even just get right up to it and touch it and then we'll delete it. But SX, this is just nitpicky really. Let's make sure the front and the back are all selected. SX, and let's even just get right on that line, and then you'll start to see that line show up, GX. That black line is going to show up, but we're going to delete it. But in the end, I'm just showing you how you'll then match the side of the building. You don't really have to be necessarily this nitpicky. But let's pick the sides of the building, and then hit U, unwrap. And then same thing, turn your magnet back on. Let's just grab it and move it, G. Sorry, don't put the magnet on yet. G, and move it out of the way so you don't accidentally pick up something else. Put the magnet back on here, and then pick these one at a time, and then G and move them. Alright, so this is the sides of our building. B to box select, pick them all up, and then G to move. Sorry. B to box select, G to grab. Is it my magnet's on? Yeah, take your magnet off if you're going to move it. Sorry. And same thing. Put it where when you scale it on the X, it's going to be just right. SX. And then you can kind of see here, zoom in, that our bricks don't quite match up yet at the corners because I'm low. But SX, let me scale it in just a little bit. And then G, just move it. So, fidgeting. Okay, let's leave it at that. Now, like I said, you can go back at the end and go delete out that line we just made. You can hide it. We can just do file save as, overwrite that PNG, and then come back into Blender, and then remember it's buggy when we do so, so the line's still there right now. But let's save our model, open recent, and then open the same model, and then there it goes. Okay, so we're good. The only thing I forgot to do for you was the stone. You can figure that out. Control R, make your loop cut, drag it down, and then now you've got this new section here down below that you're going to have to map out. Let's go remap these faces for fun, just to show you how you do that. U, unwrap, put your magnet on, and get stack in here. Actually, always move them out of the way. G, so magnet off. G, move them out of the way. And then magnet on. And start stacking. And then just bring it over here. Turn your magnet off. B to box select. SY, SX, GX. Alright, so now we got our windows back. I'm upside down on this side. R180. We're almost there. So the only one thing I want to do here is we're going to unwrap this entire lower panel all the way around versus where we had a separation or a break here when we did the brick part. So I want to create a seam here. So what you're going to want to do is go to edge select mode and pick this edge, Control E, and mark seam. What that mark seam does is basically tells the computer to make a cut right here and then unwrap it around. So the seam is going to show up in red. You select the seam first, then Control E and pick mark seam. You can also clear your seams if you want to get rid of it if it's not doing what you want. But watch this now. If we pick these lower panels, and this is where we want our stone. Alright, so we got the whole thing picked. If we hit U and unwrap, it's just going to do it in a nice straight line. G, drag it up here, and then you can scale it. Now, had we not done that, I'm going to Control Z back. Had we not created this seam, I'll show you what would have happened. So let's pick the edge and clear our seam. Control E, clear seam, and then let's pick all these on the bottom. You've got a lot of automatic unwrapping options. I usually just have sort of a way to manually unwrap. It just works better for me. But if you click U and you go unwrap, it makes them all connected. If you click U and go cube projection, it's probably closer to what you want and you could go with it. But it overlaps things funny. I don't like how it does it. And just for this, it's not a true cube that we're really unwrapping. We're just doing a linear unwrap, so I like to make a seam here. Control E, mark seam, and then do, this is sort of I guess what I consider more of a manual unwrap. And then once I get done with this, we'll bring it into Unity and we'll be done. U, unwrap, G, S to scale. Cool. A to deselect. Alright, so I like that. Let's save it. Now the one thing before we bring it into Unity, well, two things here. One is let's select the whole thing, so A, and you can see, well, I still haven't done some things. So what didn't I do? I didn't do the underside of the roof. So we need to do that. Now remember I said we've got extra space on the side here. So what we could do is we could just make something black there for the underside of the roof. However, we've got the windows that are black and we don't need this to be real high res, so I'm going to do B to box select here, and that's the underside of the roof. And look, I don't even care how it's unwrapped it, because in the end I'm going to scale. I don't want that selected there. Shift left mouse click to deselect that part, but S to scale it. I'm going to just make this so microscopic it doesn't even matter, and then I'm just going to put it in one of these window panes. And so it's just really low resolution. Yeah, up close it would look crappy, but in the end it doesn't matter. It's just almost going to a single color for us, and that's all that matters for me, because it's not really something that's getting a view. It's just the undersill. Now looks like we put the roof off center, so we could fix that. Let's go pick our roof. I'm just going to go into wireframe mode here and then hit 7 and look from above. GY, drop it down. So anyway, go back into texture view. All right, so let's work on getting this sucker into Unity here. So let's save, and then let's go to our layers and make sure we don't have anything extra. You may have these two in two different layers if you're I'm just going to unjoin these real quick so you can see this. That's if my roof is selected, I hit P and I go by selection, and they're actually going to unjoin it. So now you see I've got two layers. So imagine this was called roof, and you had built your roof and your building separately. I know it's misspelled, oh well. And you wanted to join these, so then just you're in object mode, and then shift click both of them. So you see that? So that I click the roof and then shift click the brick part, and then hit J to join. That didn't work. So come over here on the left and choose join. See now how they're merged into one? And that's what you want to do at the end. So actually what I usually do before the merge is you can save two files. So leave this as your regular, and then I'll do a save as, and then you can call it, you know, UV, call it whatever you're calling this building, and then just underscore it as like merge or something. And this is the one I'm going to clean up. So in the end, when we bring it into Unity, we also don't want the camera. So come up to the camera layer, right click, and choose delete. And so all we have is building, world, and render layers. And if we select this, all we should have is one material. All right, so let's save this. Then let's export this. So file, export as FBX. And I'm going to leave it as UV1 or UV part 1 underscore merge. You're going to call it building or schoolhouse or whatever. And then we're going to come into Unity, and just as I showed you with the other one, we are going to bring this in as an object. So I've created a My Assets folder, an Objects, and a Prefab folder. Inside the Objects, a Materials folder gets generated automatically, and then I made a Textures folder, and this was for the other building that we did the other way for unwrapping. So just do Import New Asset. Go ahead and choose this new one, this UV Part 1 Merge. Import that. And then you're going to see here, if you click on the down arrow, you've just got building. It's 84 tries and one UV map, which is nice. Our materials, this is building part 2, which is the name of the texture. So come back to the UV part 1 merge, and let's clean up this. So we're in the inspector for that. Let's go to animations and unclick and apply the animations. The rig is none. And then let's add the generate colliders. And then I like this, I just like it as the model name and the model's material. Now I know they're the same in this case, but just in case you're in a different naming pattern of doing it, you could also just do it from the model's material, which we know is also building part 2, but I'm just going to apply that. So there we go, UV part 1 merge, and building part 2 is the material. And so I can delete this other one, building part 2, because it's not part of this. And then let's bring in for the texture, import new, let's bring in the one we built out of Photoshop, that PNG. So this building part 2. And then let's go to the material and drag this to the albedo channel. And then I just make it pure white because it's altering the color of it there. And then I change the shader from standard to, you'd probably end up creating a normal and make a bump diffused. If you do that, you can see there's a spot for normal map. Right now, let's just put it in as a diffuse. And then we're going to just make the prefab for it. So we've got this here, so let's go right click on the prefabs and create a prefab, and let's call this UV part 1, because that's just the name of this one that I've done. And then we're going to drag the UV part 1 merge to it. Then you're going to see that, bring it in here. Now obviously you're going to have to figure out the scaling for yourself. You can do the correct scaling inside of Blender if you want. I think it's just easier to bring things in and scale them here. And so you can see there. Alright, now obviously maybe you don't want all these windows across. I hope you kind of understood how you could manage that. but just real quick, this will be the last thing, is if you select this tab to go into edit mode, let's say this middle panel you don't want to have windows in it, or maybe, just drag it away. So it's selected, G to grab it and drag it over to this other one that we're using is sort of the just tileable brick. And obviously you maybe need to fiddle with it to get it correct here. That looks better. All right. Good luck.